Hi, this is Tutor Nick P, and this is Quotes 193. The quote today is by Stalin. Okay, and this is a famous quote. The people who cast the votes, meaning the people who actually put in the votes, don't decide the election. The people who count the votes do. So, all right, let's look at the note here. This quote by Stalin is basically talking about fixed elections and voter fraud. So you could be putting in your vote and you think it counts, but if they had already fixed it before time, it really doesn't matter how you vote. Now, I do hope that there is some hope that we can actually get people elected who are supposed to be elected, but obviously there's a lot of irregularities that still go on and have gone on in a number of the past elections. So especially in the US, even though I believe this does happen in quite a few countries. It happens in European countries definitely as well.
Welcome back to Occam's Razor. Thank you for viewing, which in itself will help grow the channel. And please like, share, and subscribe. It's the only way to increase the viewership. If you'd like to provide tips of either kind, links are in the description along with anything referenced in this cast. Is the election fixed? Have the Liberal Party of Canada pulled out all the stops when it comes to dirty and unethical tricks to win this election at any cost? Hoping that the remaining undecided voters will maintain themselves in an amnesia of the last 10 years of misery and unaliving by a criminal political organization that has enriched itself and their friends at the expense of a treasury whose debt interest payments no longer are even covered by the GST collected. Earlier this week, I covered PPC candidate Megan Graham, who was told her bank account was inexplicably frozen by Van City Bank on orders apparently from the Liberal government.
We're going to be joined by Megan Murphy, who's a Canadian writer, journalist. She's based in Vancouver. She has written, spoken about, and talked and criticized third wave feminism, male feminists, the sex industry, the exploitation of women in mass media, censorship, gender identity legislation. The list literally goes on and on. Megan is a fierce advocate, and recently she was debanked, coincidentally at the same time that she became a registered candidate for the People's Party of Canada in our current snap federal election. Megan, thanks so much for joining us. And maybe we can also just show your Substack post here for anybody, any of our viewers that aren't aware of what happened to you 2 weeks ago now, or just under 2 weeks last week. And so they can find it a little bit more. But if you could brief the audience, just give us a broad overview of what exactly happened to your bank account. And I understand you're living abroad.
Yeah, so it was 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, the very same day that my candidacy was, my candidacy was confirmed with Elections Canada. I discovered that my bank account was frozen. So that was a bit of a red flag for me. But I called my bank. No one would give me any answers. No one would tell me why. I was given the runaround. I called back, and I was finally able to extricate from them that they had frozen my bank account due to orders from the government. I asked for something in writing. They refused to give me anything in writing. They finally told me that they had received a fax. I asked if I could see the fax. They said no. And they gave me a contact number at the government, which I called. I couldn't reach anyone there. I left message after message after message. I tried calling general numbers. No one would call me back. No one would give me any information. So I'm still in the dark about why the account was frozen. And I can't say for certain that it was politically motivated, but it does seem very, very strange to me that the bank account that I've had with Van City Credit Union since I was 10 years old was suddenly frozen the day that my candidacy was confirmed with the People's Party of Canada. And as you said earlier, I've been a political dissident in Canada for at least a decade now and have been subject to all sorts of suppression and censorship and blacklisting and protests. And I did, I left Canada 4 years ago, in part because I didn't feel safe in my East Vancouver neighborhood, which is where I'm running. I'm running in the riding of Vancouver East.
I encourage you to watch the whole clip. When she mentions the following election sign tampering, we see a well-known pattern repeat itself among the political left, as you will also see from the Northern Perspectives coverage of Mark Carney's riding volunteers doing some unethical thievery of their own.
The Vancouver East riding, for those unfamiliar, is an extremely leftist riding, perhaps the most leftist riding in Canada. It's an NDP stronghold. So running there was not about any expectation that I would be elected, but to present a challenge to that NDP stronghold and to all of those people living in that riding who think that they can continue to operate like these authoritarian bullies and that no one will stand up for them and that everyone is too scared to challenge them. Like even just putting a sign with my face on it attached to the PPC logo is, courageous in and of itself. I've already gotten emails from people saying they put signs up and immediately they were stolen off their lawn.
Wow.
It's just, it's a really bad area full of people who think that they're really good people.
Barbara Ball, she has been trying to run a very above board campaign, a high energy campaign, and a campaign with integrity. Unfortunately, her opponent and his team doesn't seem to be playing by the same rules.
Hello, Nepean. It's Barbara Ball, your Conservative candidate. In a democracy, the right to free speech is sacred. It's common knowledge that the Barbara Ball team is very organized. Our signs were up very early in the campaign. Many of our wooden stakes are marked with blue tops and NCA for Nepean Conservative Association written on them. Now, we are discovering that hundreds of our signs are missing. We have found many of our signs in the garbage. We have also discovered empty holes and, in other instances, wooden stakes with blue tips and NCA written on them, bearing my opponent's red sign. When people resort to criminal behavior, they are undermining the democratic process itself. This is unacceptable. Our community deserves better. We must stand united against such actions, which tarnish the democratic ideals that we hold dear.
Now, it's not just the Liberal Party volunteers in Mark Carney's riding who practice unethical, dirty politics during the election. This seems to be rampant throughout the campaign. Buttongate, anyone?
You want to know just how desperate the Liberals are to hang on to power? Let me tell you a little story about buttons. Yes, buttons, but not just any buttons. These were planted, disinformation-laced, Trump-themed buttons deliberately scattered around a Conservative conference in Ottawa last weekend. And the people who did it? Liberal Party operatives. Now, you would think that that would be the scandal, but nope. The real scandal is that they admitted to it, and no one's been fired. They've not even been named, although CBC journalists know exactly who they are. So let me walk you through the scandal.
But there's more. Gray Humphrey published today that thousands of isolated workers are being denied the ability to vote in the 2025 federal election. Bottom line up front, it seems that they were deceived regarding their ballot access by their employer, and it may not be relegated to one worksite only. These are workers from all over the BC province and from across Canada. In a country where many ridings could flip from a few votes. Votes from a mainly male blue-collar workforce I would expect would be voting for their best interests, for a party that supports the expansion of natural resources, which is where these workers are employed. And we all know which party has not developed Canada's resources for the last 9 years because, well, insert latest far-left virtue signaling current thing here, whatever reason they make up.
Rebel News with more on this important story. Rebel News has received concerning information from multiple verified sources who allege that thousands of tradesmen working for the massive LNG Canada project in Kitimat, BC, may not be able to have access to vote on Election Day this Monday. They claim they were led to believe that transportation would be bringing them to a site where they could vote, only to find out just yesterday, which was Thursday, that that's not happening unless you are a Kitimat resident. However, most of them are not. Now, I must let you know this is a developing story. I have put out my media inquiries.
That is an ongoing story due to the closeness of the election. There might be more, as Dre has requests out to all stakeholders, but as mentioned earlier, there's a sense of urgency to get the word out for these votes to get counted. But you ask yourself, how can this be? Why have the mainstream media not reported or downplayed these few examples of election interference in this video? Well, Clyde sums it up nicely from this article.
From reformmediaperspective.ca, millions distributed to Canada's legacy media during election campaign. This should be, I mean, this is unheard of. This is just crazy. I mean, except for like, you know, banana republics or perhaps the old Soviet Union when Pravda was the name of the game. While the media was covering the federal election, the newly formed Canadian Journalism Collective, that's right, the CJC, started its first handouts of cash from the enormous pot of $100 million that is now mandated to give to the Canadian news outlets each year. This was the payola that they got from putting in new legislation. The funding comes from the money that Google was required to pay in order to comply with the Liberal government's Bill C-18, the Online News Act, which was, of course, it was a crackdown. It was the mafioso. Hey, you got a lovely news outlet there. You got a lovely search engine. It would be a shame if we shut it down in Canada. Give us money, which passed through Parliament in 2023. As revenue has dwindled for the legacy media, the Liberal government has been very motivated to step in with their own funding, both directly and indirectly. In addition to its $1.4 billion in annual funding of the CBC, it provided about $885 million, so close to another $1 billion.
And if you want to know where that will lead us, other than into a dystopian totalitarian hellscape if the Liberal Party forms government again, I'll let Pierre Poilievre explain it in the closeout.
That we are going to start off here with a clip from Pierre Poilievre saying that the Online News Act, that's the one that basically forbade Canadians from sharing any sort of news on social media, primarily Meta, so Facebook and Instagram. And he's calling a spade a spade. He's saying that it's the Liberals' attempt to hide the fact that they have decimated free speech and our way of living over the last decade of their reign of terror.
A great question. It was about how after the lost Liberal decade, many media outlets cannot actually share their information on Facebook and Instagram. This has really attacked our local independent media, and maybe that's the goal with out of control inflation, rising housing costs, crime and chaos in our streets. Liberals are trying to get a fourth term by shutting out that information. Their entire campaign is based on making you forget what happened over the last 10 years of Liberal government and forget what will happen in the next 15 years if you read this report that was just leaked out that says that Canadians will be forced to forage on public lands for food if things continue on the current Liberal track. So it's not surprising that Liberals would want to shut out discussion on that. But a fourth Liberal term is not the answer. What we need is a new Conservative government to bring change so you can afford food and homes. Change so there's safety in your streets. Change so that we have freedom of expression. Thank you very much.